Welcome to our latest From the Field episode of FP Next, and today we are truly from the field, bringing you the updates. My name is Sarah McNaughton Peterson, and I'm one of your co-hosts of this Farm and Rancher Driven podcast. I'm here with Kurt Arns.
Hi, Sarah. Yes, we're here again, and we are in front of a cornfield in the Cornhusker State at Husker Harvest Days. So it's a really great time to be visiting with our Husker Harvest Days farm manager, Jason Libby, who has a really strong farm legacy right here at the site with his family. And so, Jason, we're really glad to have you on FP Next today. Could you tell us just a little bit about your family's long history with Husker Harvest Days?
Yeah, so between me and my father, we've been out here for 40 years. I started out here when I was 12 years old. And it's just amazing how the show has evolved in size and what we all do out here.
Yep. And so your dad was the farm manager for a long time. About what year was that then?
1985 was the first year that we did it. We actually lived in Clarks, Nebraska at the time, and we relocated up here in 86 and been here ever since.
And you grew up with Husker Harvest Days, working these fields. So that's really quite a legacy, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the stories I could tell you and the relationships that a lot of the exhibitors, actually a couple of them came to my wedding.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
We've heard a lot about some fun Husker Harvest Days and Farm Progress Show stories this summer, and
Yeah.
maybe have to hit the Syngenta Square and hear a little bit more about those later. But talk a little bit about what's the growing season been like? What's the weather been like? Matt Youngman gave us a little bit of an update before Husker, but now that you're actually harvesting some corn and got some hay down, what's it been like this season?
It started out kind of rough. You know, we come out here about April 10th and plant 85-day corn. And we had to water it up. And then we ended up getting a bunch of rain, and the year kind of was so-so. I was a little nervous about having really wet corn for the show. And then Mother Nature turned the burners on and kind of kicked it in gear. And now this corn behind us, it's 95-day corn Pioneer. It's testing about 22.
So I was here the day you were planting some of these same fields, and the wind was blowing, and we were planting into a lot of dust.
Yes.
And so things really change. It kind of shows how Mother Nature kind of throws us some curves. Huh?
Yes. And it goes back to the old saying, you know, plant in the dust and the bins will bust.
Right, there you go.
And this corn is doing, it's probably 15, 20 bushel above average than normal. It's doing really well.
Yep. And so we're, on the disease and other issues you farm outside of the Husker Harvest Days show site with your own ground. So have you had any issues as far as cropping issues on beans or corn this year?
Yeah, we ended up putting our fungicides on a little earlier this year and kind of changed it up from what we normally use. We did see some early tar spot and kind of got that nipped. And then Southern Rust just hammered us late. And we actually had to spray twice. This year is the first year that we've sprayed the short season that we demo for the fields with fungicide this year, because it was so drastic. And we usually try not to do it because the moisture content, it just keeps the plant alive a lot longer. Yeah. So you end up with wetter corn, and we're kind of on a time schedule here. So
absolutely. Have you had any major like weed issues or pests that you've been working with? I know you touched a little bit on the diseases, but how about the other little buggers?
Out here we have an agronomist. I've worked with the same agronomist for over 25 years now. And it goes back to the old saying. I thought this was crazy a couple years ago when I went to a chemical deal. The best way to control weeds is to spray black dirt to kill them before they even come up. So we do have an issue, but I think with the right chemicals and everything that's the technology that's out here today, if you do it right and execute a plan, it works really well.
And I mean, you've got a great opportunity to see some of the latest tech and be like, I want to try this out next year. Just leave this here for certain vendors, right?
I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've tried out here that I've done demos on or test plots on, I implemented and moved to my own farm just because of the results. Sometimes might not be a yield bump, but you get a better control on a weed, like an adjuvant or something like that.
So talking about the technology, and you talked about, how your first connections with Husker Harvest Days, talk just a little bit about, what technology was like, what the new tech was like when you were young, and then compared to, where we are now.
Well, back then you actually had to drive a tractor. You couldn't be on your cell phone all day and watching TikToks. We actually, when John Deere first came out with their first SF1 John Deere guidance, we actually had the very first one out here. And yeah, and then there from, it's just amazing. Now you got Bluetooth and TV, and you can watch Netflix everywhere. And not that you should do that while you're operating equipment, but yeah, it's pretty nuts. When we first came out here, I mean, sometimes we'd have to quit planting because the dust was blowing the wrong way and you couldn't see your mark in the dirt.
It's one of those things you only have to turn at the end of the row anymore, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it'll beep at you and wake you up.
I know it's a super interesting thing to talk about, the implementation of technology. Is there any latest tech that you're kind of working on that you've brought from the farm show to your own fields?
You know, a lot of it is just everything in nowadays is record keeping. You know, it does you no good to go out and plant this number of corn if you're not going to do a yield check on it or know where it's at through the whole year and lay your yield maps over your planting maps. So a lot of it is just keeping history, knowing what works. You know, this year we had a wet year or dry or whatever, and then all of a sudden, you know, you go back and say, well, you know, it looks like this year's going to kind of be like 2012. You know, what worked that year? Go back and look at your records and kind of implement it. And it's kind of like the show, you know, sometimes you have a really good game plan, and then sometimes you got to punt and go to plan B.
Absolutely.
So we're recording this on 9/11. A lot of times Husker Harvest Days does run during 9/11, and we had the show on the actual 9/11 in 2001. So Jason, were you here at the show that day? And most people who were here surely remember what a somber day that was.
Yeah, we were just getting ready for the day 3, or I think it was day 2, maybe, corn demo. And we were up in the grain bins on a little TV watching it, and nobody could believe it. It was just, everybody was just in awe, and it was just a really somber day. The show site was rather quiet that day.
Yeah, and ever since, whenever the show is on 9/11, along flag row at the entrance, the flags are always at half staff, and so, you know, to honor that memory. But certainly that's one of the more memorable but somber Husker Harvest Days ever, for sure.
Absolutely. You know, just somber day in American history, but
Yes.
remembering and moving on and paying tribute to those that we lost in those incidents is always an important thing. And I think those of us in agriculture have a very strong tie to communities like that.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, perfect. Jason, thank you so much again for letting us join you out in your cornfield and dragging you all the way out here so we could film our From the Field in the field this time. And to our listeners, thank you so much for following along with us. We are on YouTube, Farm Progress Online, every podcast platform, wherever you'd like to listen to us, you have the opportunity to. And make sure you subscribe and you can keep up with what is coming next. And Kurt, I think you're going to share a personal story from your own farm on this next episode.
Yes, and it's actually a little bit of a twist from something that we would normally do, right? So we're going to talk a little bit of history, and we're going to talk a little bit about some true crime on the farm. So stay tuned.
Absolutely. And remember, if it's agriculture, your friends at Farm Progress have you covered. Here's wishing you high yields and good weather. We'll see you next time.